You get up and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business. And I have chosen you to preach this evangel.
For all my free market healthcare robbing, stock stealing, retirement fund fucking with niggas. Fuck you little credit card scamming, jewelry stealing, crack selling, liquor store robbing motherfuckers. Shout to the homies, Carnegie, OG, Willie Randolph Hearst, Baruch, Rockefeller, the real Rockefeller, my main bitch Leona, pour out a little Louis XIII, Scott Rothstein, Jack Abramoff, hold your head, my roll chop niggas, let's get this money. I spend my day prepping America overseas, pension for the workers, nigga please, embezzlement, etiquette, private settlement, I'm better with Confederate rhetoric from my mansion in Connecticut, foreclose a big holes at the tenement, I twist words like a speech impediment, I hope you got good credit bitch, if not better get a new job with benefits, while I play golf with niggas to get cheddar with, new money buys brand new carrots, my old money bought your great grandparents, you got grills in your mouth, I ain't mad at ya, I own every gold mine in South Africa. Thanks, baby, you made me $1 billion. Plus, I own a building for each one of my children's children.
I think we are in the air. You hear me?
everybody, UCY Radio. Sorry for the couple minutes late start to our show. We had a couple technical difficulties. I'm here with my co-host, CP Libre. Dylan Wade is sick, so he is out for this week. And it is Sunday night. It is 9:05 here on the East Coast, 6:05 on the West Coast. And we are talking about the kidnappings in Iguala, Mexico, that happened 1 year ago now. This is the year anniversary. I think the official year anniversary, I think, was yesterday. 43 students that were demonstrating against the protest was against unfair practices of hiring by the Mexican government, which many jobs in Mexico, are directly hired by the Mexican government, and that include, they have nationalized police force, nationalized a lot of stuff. So a lot of stuff is direct. A lot of job opportunities that were being skewed by people that really don't have much of a choice. Plus, they were talking about just the general corruption inside the Mexican government. These people were not kidnapped by the cartels at first. In fact, the people that got them at first, there was buses that they were on, and I think the police had took over the buses. That was the clash right there, where they took over the buses, and then they started arresting a bunch of them. And then when they had them in holding, at some point, the police handed them over to a local drug cartel. Actually, not local; it's actually a major drug cartel across the area, and the drug cartel took them into custody. Where after that, things started to become hazy because it's said that they took them to another place, and while they were taking them, had a lot of them were killed by suffocation. 15 were killed while transporting them, and then it's believed that at some other point, probably the rest were unfortunately, the rest were either disappeared or killed, and there's only been 6 bodies recovered, and 2 I think 6 bodies recovered, and 2 what could be possibly them recovered. Their bodies were disposed of, it's believed, by burning them, and anything else really related to the crimes that were done. And that was pretty much the end of it. And the thing is that Peña Nieto has had such a cold response, and it's really not even he's treated the whole situation without any real, doesn't seem to be any real wanting to get to the bottom of what actually happened 1 year ago. And people have rallied and started a big movement of trying to, if any of these 43 students are alive, for them to be returned, or for justice for the ones that were killed, or if all of them were unfortunately killed.
That's a great point, because many independent movements, I think movements that have nothing to do with the 43 students, they are getting together into this movement. We are creating an only forefront.
Well, it's not even just all across Mexico even that this movement went into the United States. It went into Canada. It's really spread out. The support behind the people trying to get justice for these that were kidnapped. And the thing is that the Mexican government is now almost without a doubt. I mean, at least to the effect of that those police were being negligent and did a bad job of handling the dissidents or the protesters, and the thing is that it wasn't, I don't think it was unintentional that they gave it to the drug cartels. They were treated, they knew there were dissidents and they wanted to get rid of them. And the untold truth about Mexico is that the Mexican government and the cartels work together down there. And so does the United States government. They provide arms to the drug cartels, and the drug cartels almost act like a mercenary force of enforcing the Mexican government's tyranny over the Mexican citizens, and the Mexican government, I think they know that it's getting desperate for them, because I think the people have woken up. The people of Mexico are very angry at the Mexican government. Peña Nieto has been, when he was returning back from a foreign trip, they had to bring him into special security measures. Like, they wouldn't even bring him anywhere near the public, because they knew there was a slight chance, that he could be taken out by many of the angry Mexican citizens. And that was pretty recently that they had to do the special security. And Peña Nieto, his government buildings have been attacked in Mexico, burnt down. There were actually, no, it wasn't the government building that was burnt down. Or they set on fire. They set on fire one of Peña Nieto's government officials' houses. That's how intense this whole movement has led up to. And I think that this movement is just the start of something big in Mexico. And I don't think Peña Nieto is going to make it to his 2018 re-election. Actually, they don't have a re-election in Mexico. But to 2018, the next election, I don't think Peña Nieto is going to serve his entire 6-year term. In Mexico, they serve 1 6-year term, and so 2018, Peña Nieto would not be able to be re-elected, but it'd be somebody just like him. Because the person just before Peña Nieto, Felipe Calderón, was very, very much of the same, and he was the president from 2006 to 2012. And what Peña Nieto, what really is, a statement of, is now that the PRI party was a party that ruled Mexico for decades, uncontested, and was very open. It was a dictatorship during that time. Enjoyed a lot of support of D.C., and that was the way from 1929 all the way to 2000. And now they're back in power, and they're acting, it's like Mexico's pretending to be a democracy for a little bit, the Mexican government, but now they've shown that they're showing again that they're an open dictatorship. That, they are not trying to hide that anymore. And I think the people are getting angry, though. And the people are just tired of this corruption that's happened in Mexico for really the last 100 years almost. It really goes back, all the way back to what the Mexicans wanted back in 1917, the same year as the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. They had the Zapatista Revolution in Mexico, but it was never completely fulfilled in Mexico, and the PRI eventually took power. I think people don't want a degenerated revolution. They want a real revolution this time. And
I definitely want.
Yeah, and I think this is what it really goes back to, is that really this is a second chance for Mexico. This is the time for them to shine and to shine and make a new revolutionary state that actually will be that actually can be modeled over other revolutionary countries. I think they should look to the ones in Latin America. I think they should look to what happened in Cuba. I think they should look to what happened in Venezuela. And I think Mexico, this would be very big, because Mexico has 100 million plus people, and it's a country that I think if it really used its full potential could be a world power. It was a world power back in the early 1900s, and before that, during the Mexican Empire. I think that was when they still had a. I think they still are. Yeah, they actually. Well, it was only an empire because the West, they enjoyed a lot of support of the West. I think this would be a little bit different, because this new powerful Mexico would be, of course, D.C. would not like if a true leftist government took over. Even if somebody like Obrador took over, which I don't think he's as radical as some of the people that are, now have a lot more momentum to their movement, that have ever since this happened. It's tragic what happened. It's very tragic what happened. These people were all very young. They're not much older than even myself. And they're just in their early 20s, and they were all, and then all they did were, speaking out towards the corruption in their own government, and then they die in a brutal fashion. And now it's just a mystery of what happened to them. But I think that it's up to the people of Mexico to make sure that their deaths are not in vain. And what I mean by that is that to make sure that Peña Nieto does not see 2018, and Peña Nieto spends 2018 not back in Mexico City as the president, but in jail awaiting what would probably be a death sentence. I mean, Peña Nieto, just like the people that fund him in D.C., is very, very corrupt and has done a lot of harm to Mexico in the 3 years of his power. And I think that, it's an indictment of what happens when the United States government, supports. These are the kind of people they support in South America. I mean, they supported Pinochet. They supported the Bolivian fascist government. They supported the Argentinian fascist government. Yeah. They supported Carlos Andres Perez in Venezuela back in the 80s when he killed thousands of protesters. This brings me to a similar event in history, and that's the Carzaco. It's very similar. What happened? It was a standoff between the Venezuelan government and protesters, most of leftist protesters, and then the only thing was there was no mystery to it. They just started shooting at people, and this was kind of similar because there was a standoff, and there's believed to have been a shooting, and then the police kidnapped them. I think this could be that event that sets the fire to the revolution, and this in Venezuela it slowly started up until eventually Chavez was elected. This I think will be even quicker than that. I think that's going to be a fire that will rage and very quickly will engulf the fascist state of Mexico City.
Yeah, that's true. About Ayotzinapa, there is a story behind this. After the Mexican Revolution, when we found some stability in the country, they started to establish normal rural schools, and like Ayotzinapa, and they were teaching Marxist theory. That was a real big problem for the government because they made people aware about the situation, about they were poor, and about what they had to do. They had to first study. They had to read a lot of books, most of them about Marxist theory. And that became a problem in the 70s when Lucio Cabañas, a teacher of Ayotzinapa, he started a movement against the government, demanding all of the needs they consider they must supply. So the government started to chase them. Lucio Cabañas had to run to the hills. He had to take refuge in the field. And since the field, he started a revolutionary movement. So this story is kind of a mystery also, because nobody knows what happened to Lucio Cabañas. But his ideology, what we know as pobrismo, kind of translation would be purism. He founded the party of the poor people, and this ideology is very present in the students of Ayotzinapa. So this chasing has been done by the government since the 70s. This is not new. So I think the killing of the students or the kidnapping, we don't know what happened exactly, but I hope this is this spark that set the whole country on fire.
Unfortunately, we do. What we have pieced together is that we know that there's six. We know that looks like 6 people. Definitely 6 people did not survive the original shootout with the police, and then 2 looks like they didn't survive either because they found what looks to have been remains of these 2 people. I think that's how it goes. So that means that there still could be, possibly, who knows, held somewhere. That would be 35, students still somewhere, and I really hope that they're still alive and one day they'll get returned, to their families. Really, these people were almost really just kids. These people were only 20 something. These people had their parents are still. They all have parents probably, and now all of a sudden they're missing their children. And I think that's part of what makes it so terrible is that the government would commit such actions against people that are so young. It's like when Kent State happened here in the United States. When they opened fire on a Vietnam War demonstration here back in the 70s, and ended up killing four American students, and quite a few more were injured. It's partially because it's just so young, and they get their lives cut short for simply exercising a basic freedom. And like I said, is that I think this will be the event that when people remember, why did the revolution happen? Why did we fight this very long and lengthy affair? Really, that revolution is. It doesn't just overthrow the government's not where revolution ends. It goes on even further, and it's a fight that continues on. And it really should be seen as a long and lasting flame that you have to keep. And revolution, like in Venezuela, I think that some people say that it ended in '98. I think it just started in '98 when Chavez was elected. And I think it's still going on really to this day. To the eventual creation of a country where the workers call the shots and not corporations and billionaires and the government and their government cronies like in Mexico. I mean, Mexico is a country where so many live in utter poverty, and like you said, that's where the idea of poorism comes from. I know what you're talking about. It's like I think it's the like third world socialism is the other name for it. For that ideology, is for uniting the third world citizens against the elites that make it that way, where they have to live in these conditions. Because when you look at these countries like Guatemala, Honduras, these countries are very the ones that are even where the average people are even poor as Mexico, even or in Mexico, they have something common, is that there's super rich people that create this extreme inequality, that have billions of dollars and have made billions of dollars off the super cheap labor of that country. And, in the United States, it's heading that way. And as the United States, the average people have gotten poor, the rich have gotten way richer in the last 30, 40 years as the middle class just crumbles. And that's what happens, is that because of in Mexico, there used to be a middle class. In Colombia, there used to be a middle class, but they have all crumbled away. And the United States is going down the same path. And I think that's, again, why there hasn't been, we look in the past, there's been some movements here in the United States that were somewhat revolutionary. But, when they happened, it was in the 70s. In the 70s, America was going through some pretty rough times economically. And I think that now, as we're starting to get into rougher times, I think that could spark more revolutionary events. Because it's not until people fall out of their first world luxuries, people start to actually get angry. When you take away their iPhone, when you take away their internet, all of a sudden they get angry. So I think that and I think that in Mexico, that's already happened a long time ago. They never really even had these first world luxuries. So there's always been a history, when you look through Mexico's history, of many different revolutionary movements, including the Zapatistas and the many different revolutionary groups that fought in the 1910 through 1919 revolution. That was semi-successful. I mean, that did overthrow the system before, where most predominantly Spanish landlords controlled most of Mexico's land. The Spanish monarchical rule, or the Spanish colonial rule under a monarchy, had never really ended until that point. And Zapatista did end that. However, what happened was a degenerated state where the super rich, still controlled Mexico once the establishment of the PRI. And like you said, during the PRI time, that's where in the 70s, that teacher you're talking about, that was nobody knows what happened, but he was forced into exile and probably forced to his death, possibly. Maybe he just lived out the rest of his life, but he was never seen again, like you said. So, because he was teaching Marxist ideology, but the ironic thing is that, is that Mexico would have never really gotten to the point it was at that point. It would have been even more backwards hadn't there been the Marxist-inspired Zapatista revolution. With, of course, Emilio Zapata, which, his most famous, his most famous line was, I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees. That's kind of the attitude I think that Mexico needs to take now, is that they need to not be afraid and they need to rise up, and I think that's already happened.
Yeah, and another point is that historical background. In 1919, Zapata was killed by Venustiano Carranza. He was a politician. He was not a military. And I think he's told the cause of this revolution. The Zapata's revolution has never ended. It has also increased his popularity. That's been a kind of inspiration for these people in South Mexico, in Chiapas, and all over the country to retake these ideals that we must develop today more than ever.
Well, yeah, the Zapatistas are not gone. They never really have been gone. I mean, they have been kind of in exile down in southern Mexico. And, mostly what they do now is kind of guard the indigenous lands of the indigenous people that still live in Mexico. Like people, I think people almost forget is that, there was the people that are Mexican, as we picture an average Mexican person, is not the native people to the land of Mexico. Before there were the Mayans and the Incas that were in... Well, now the Incas were further south. There were the Aztecs. The Aztecs and the Mayas used to inhabit that land, and some of the indigenous people still live in Mexico. What's in the Zapatistas? I think soon they're going to have to. I think that's going to have to happen. Is that they're going to have to come out of exile. I know that they have a lot of they have like a civilian base. They're not militant, but they're really just there to spread their ideals around the country. But I think that the Zapatistas, at this point, should be out and protecting the protesters, especially when this thing starts to get real serious. The Zapatistas, I think they're interesting because I think that when you read about what they really think ideologically, they have learned the mistakes of failed revolutions in the past. I think they take point, they take point of some of the failures that happened in the USSR after the, that's kind of like when you look at the revolutions, and one of the ones that we look to sometimes when we see one that had some flaws in it was what happened in the USSR, and the Zapatistas seem to be when that happens try to avoid some of the similar mistakes, and what they do stress is that the revolutionary state that's created after that, the new government cannot have that much power. It can only have it. It should, and the power it does have should be to trying to create the just state that will happen after the revolution. But they're almost like anarchists. What the Zapatistas truly believe in. I mean, they believe in very small government, and I think though at the same time the Mexican government needs to also look at the successes. I think that a very successful revolution that has actually happened, is down in South America with Venezuela and all the many countries during the Pink Tide. This great change from countries that used to have fascist pro-American governments that became socialistic leaning independent. Really, I mean they some people say that they are kind of dependent on the Russians, but that's not true. I think that they have just made a truly independent movement down there, and they have an alliance with the Russians because they share similar ideals, but they are not dependent on the Russians. And I think
they're not under the Russian commands. They are quite independent.
Yeah, it's different than like when the United States used to have an alliance, in quotations, with the leaders in South America in the 70s, 80s. That was an alliance. That was almost direct command. These people carried out the U.S. agenda. These monsters that ran these countries. I mean, it's like it's weird when you talk to people in the United States, that came from these countries, and usually all they'll have to talk about is Chavez, and usually in a bad way, to talk bad about Chavez or Kirchner, all these left-leaning people for perceived wrongdoings that usually didn't happen. For example, like they'll talk about what happened in 2002, maybe when talks about Hugo Chavez. When the people were killed in the street, they don't realize they were being killed by the right-wing fascists. The opposition were killing were killing practically everybody that was killed on the streets. And they manipulated the footage, and they showed the Chavistas shooting back at the right-wing opposition, saying that they had initiated. That was after already right-wing sniper fire had been entered the crowd. In fact, the right wing in Venezuela is so callous towards death is that they'll shoot their own people, and blame it on the Venezuelan government. That's how they will, but they'll never talk about people that openly killed, and they didn't even really deny it that happened, like Carlos Andrés Perez. They won't talk about what happened then. They won't talk about Pinochet, who disappeared 60,000 people or killed them. I think when you got disappeared, that pretty much meant you were dead. Or Bolivian fascist government, all these countries that had fascist governments back in those days, they'll talk bad about the ones that freed these countries from these oppressive tyrannies. They'll talk bad about these governments that actually represent the poor. What I mean to say is that it just seems like they have a short memory. I think that the people often. I think often the problem is that with Hispanic people that come to this country is that I think they know that what they're spouting out about Chavez and Kirchner is wrong, and what they are ignoring about South America's past when they had United States alliance / United States control of South America. They forget. What they're ignoring should not be ignored. I mean, it's these same people that are against Chavez and Kirchner, of course, they're shouting out that there needs to be these countries need to be U.S. friendly. When these countries were U.S. friendly, it led to terrible results. And these people are only 40, 50 years old oftentimes. They have to remember what happened back then. They might have to remember the horrors that happened. Their neighbors being disappeared, their neighbors being killed, by Pinochet, or Carlos Andrés Perez was probably the worst of the Venezuelan leaders prior to Chavez, and then Chavez, reversed all that, all those years of agony in Venezuela, all those years of the secret police killing people, all those years of extreme economic inequality. And I think Mexico, that's one thing that's going to need to happen when Mexico finally has to have a revolution. People cannot forget what happened prior to the revolution. People need to be reminded that prior to the revolution, these kidnappings happened, many other injustices happened, the drug cartels ran wild throughout the country. Because if people forget the injustices of what happens under corporatism, a fascist government like Peña Nieto or under Pinochet, they'll be one to repeat the same mistakes later. It's like Einstein said, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah, that's part of our task to refresh the people's memory, because they don't even know their own history sometimes. That most of people just ignored what happened in the 60s and the 70s, almost in the 90s. Well, there was a strong repression against the Zapatistas in Chiapas in 94. Most of people don't know this. They were killing Zapatistas. They were killing civilian people that had nothing to do with Zapatistas. And it was the government. It was the Mexican army.
Yeah, Yeah, yeah. You know, again, I have to say with Mexico, it's like I don't. It's like of course, since you grew up there and have lived there your entire life, you're going to know a bit more about the actual history, the repression by Mexican government in the past, especially against the Zapatistas, than I will. I think that may probably this is what happened more in my corner of the woods or my neck of the woods. Over in Colombia, Venezuela. I'm going to know more specifics over there. Like what happened to Carazac or what happened. The manipulation by the right wing in Venezuela during the '02 attempted coup and all that kind of stuff. And I think again people will think why we're bringing up other Latin countries, but I think it's because Mexico is not the first country. If revolution does happen in Mexico, they have a lot of other countries to look at and learn from, and most of these other countries did not have to go through a violent struggle to get there, and I think that's what's going to eventually take place. I mean, it's already kind of became somewhat violent with the burning of that governor's house. I mean, that says it all right there. It's literally heated. It's literally on fire right now. The rage of the people, and I think that's that's definitely a good start. In the United States, people riot, but people will be rioting like what happened in Ferguson and Baltimore. There was a lot of good protesters there, a lot of people that were legitimately concerned with the police brutality, police racism. However, how is burning your local bakery going to do anything? They should be more targeted. They should be like what happened with Mexico. They should be burning down the courthouse. They should be burning down the establishments. The establishments buildings, not burning down some innocent person's house or something like that. That has nothing to do with anything. But I think that's one thing that the people, revolutionists in America, should learn from the revolutionaries south of the border. But I don't think these people that were doing such things were even revolutionaries. They were just opportunists, some of them, which also is a point that needs to be remembered, is that opportunists do happen, and you have to look out for them. Like during the Bolshevik Revolution, there were quite a few opportunists that were mixed in the bunch. A lot of them were kicked out during the revolution. I don't think and like you said, and also there's the possible enemies within. Emilio Zapata, he was killed by wasn't he killed by one of his own men, like somebody else that was in the Mexican Revolution? Oh,
Yeah, I lost you for a second. Lost you. Sorry.
but Emilio Zapata, he was killed. Wasn't that that was one of the people that was in his revolution? That was one of his own men practically that killed him, right?
Yeah, and it was not someone of his own people. We must understand the Mexican Revolution in two forefronts. The popular forefront, led by Zapata and Villa, and it just resulted in a democratic election in 1911. So the president, Francisco Madero, was killed by one of his generals, Victoriano Huerta. He betrayed on the president. So Venustiano Carranza, he was the governor of a northern state, Coahuila. So he took advantage of this, and he declared himself as the leader of the revolution. It was not true. The real leaders of revolution were Zapata. They were just put a part of the movement. They were taken just as the fucking revolt farmers or something like that. So by taking advantage of this, the PRI, they established their own party, they established their own government. They just ignored the people's demands of at that time.
Well, yeah, and then from then on out, after the PRI had established power in 1929, I think that was the year the PRI...
with another name, but they were the same founders.
Well, yeah, it was the same party. They had a different name, I think. Yeah, and then they became It's ironic though that the PRA have the name. The name in Spanish is Instituto Revolucionario or Partido Revolucionario.
Partido Revolucionario Institucional.
Sí. Which is the revolutionary. Yeah, Party of Revolutionary Institution, which is ironic because they reversed many of the things that the people in the revolution had fought for, and then by the end really had turned Mexico into what it is now, which is the complete opposite of what Zapata fought for, and it really, shows that it was an incomplete revolution, that was reversed. So I think that's, the Zapatistas have really never stopped fighting, even though that they haven't fought physical or fought, they haven't fought with arms in a while. They have fought with their civilian base. They have a large civilian base that spreads their ideals, like I said earlier in the show. And these, and then they also have their armed militants that are pretty much in exile. Zapatistas, I think that eventually they will come out of exile, and I think that they'll will be involved with many things that'll be happening in Mexico City in the next year or two. I think my prediction is that Peña Nieto won't make it till early 2017. I think that around then the people have been protesting, would have already started, possibly rioting inside of Mexico City. I think that Peña Nieto will either flee or be arrested, and then after that, there'll be there'll either be I think that it'll probably result possibly in an early election, or
I don't want to sound pessimist, but I think that unfortunately people are not prepared for an armed revolution. They're just waiting for the 2018 elections.
Well, I don't think the people can rely on that, because if you really went by that, that means that things should have changed back in 2006. I mean, Obrador has really, if you look at it, been elected twice, but he won twice, but it was stolen from him. The first time was almost certain. I mean, most of the Mexican people accepted that it was a stolen election by Calderon, and then in 2012 it was pretty widely known that it was another rigged election. So the election's not going to do shit. The only thing that's going to work at this point is a revolution. And I don't even think it would come to an armed revolution. I don't think it would come to an armed revolution, though. I think, or not a full-fledged battles between the Mexican military and Mexican people.
What's the problem? You and I know that, but people don't want to accept the idea that the only way is a revolution, social revolution.
Yeah, it's like the same as the American people. They don't want to accept. They really just don't grasp the fact that the Democrats and the Republicans are not any different in any way, really, with any major issues. They just want to keep believing, keep in their dream world that that it's actually a real democracy. That the super rich don't run everything. They want to actually believe that and then the Americans won't. And they actually want to believe, I guess, that the super rich got there legitimately, not via exploitation and many different shady, very ugly acts, in many ways of pretty much just robbing the poor, is how these billionaires have gone into their status. But the American people don't want to believe that. They just want to believe what they've been told on the TV. They don't want to believe that the TV's been lying to them all these years. And I think that's the same thing in Mexico, is that they have too much faith in the media, too much faith in the elections. And, the media in Mexico, as far as I'm concerned, is pretty much like the same as the media in the United States, just with a little bit different tactics of how they fool the people. Instead of on I was just gonna say is that it's like on American TV, they have the CNN, MSNBC, Fox. They just have a bunch of often blatant lies about the situations in the Middle East, scaring people Muslims, scaring people, subtly of different groups, you know.
That's your boogeyman. Our boogeyman is Lopez Obrador. They are doing all the things possible to make him look like a boogeyman for the 2018.
Oh yeah, it's yeah. They're going to do that to Obrador. It's kind of it's kind of similar to I'm trying to think probably the best example. I think they did that to Chavez somewhat in Venezuela before his run, but he triumphed eventually. But they actually really didn't even make him look bad. They just tried to make him look insignificant. They tried to make it seem like, oh yeah, he's only got 8% of the polls. They put out these polls that were obviously wrong to say that he had no chance, hoping that people would believe that he had no chance, and by doing that would not vote for him. But he actually had more like 70% support of the country, and then he won with like 50-something% of the vote. Yeah, Obrador is kind of similar. I think he's not as leftist Hugo Chavez was. I don't think he's a radical.
Yeah, I think he has to declare himself as a socialist because they could be taken as more than a boogeyman, because we have the example of Venezuela, what happened in Venezuela, what happening now, what happened when Chavez was a president. I think he's waiting the perfect moment to declare himself socialist. I think he's socialist, but he's scared about the people response about it.
I mean, he really was supposed to have won the election twice. That's the thing at this point. So it's like the election is not going to do anything. I think that the only way is if the Mexican government falls apart after there's been demonstrations and everything, and then the people organize a new election that can't be rigged. I think that really at this point, the people just need to seize the power, because Peña Nieto's government, there's a difference between that and the United States government. The United States government would be very hard to take out because they're too stable. They have many ways to stay stable. The Mexican government is very unstable. I think they could be overthrown with I think they could be just overthrown really with just some rioting that would scare them, and I think Peña Nieto would be on a flight out of Mexico. I don't really see him as being the guy that would stick it out when he's in any possible danger. So the only way that the Mexican government would stay in power after there was any bit of violence, against them, is if they knew they were being protected by the United States, like they actually deployed troops or paramilitary troops, like Blackwater into Mexico. But I don't think that. I think though that it's when people wake up, that's the only choice, and they realize that they can either be scared and not partake of revolution, or they could, or they could not be scared and take power and take freedom. There's only two choices at this point for the Mexican people, the American people, or any people that have been locked under the system of corporatism.
Yeah, we should take advantage of this situation. This is a worldwide situation. It's the same happening in all of the countries who are trying to be ruled by the U.S. But I think it's a little more soft, the situation in Mexico. We are treated like children. Really, it's offensive, but we are really being treated like children. Because I mean, your boogeyman, I insist, your boogeyman is the situation in the Middle East where Russians getting in war with the U.S. and this is something that is likely to happen. But in Mexico, the only thing that would happen if Obrador gets the president is that would be a kind of a soft change.
Well, all that stuff though, that's like you were saying that the United States boogeyman. It's true that the United States will probably provoke war eventually with the Iranians, with the Syrians. I think that's very possible to happen even this year, possibly, because they've been pushing so many provocations against the Assad government that Assad's eventually just going to have to strike back and defend himself. And then Iran's going to be drawn into the conflict, and then it's going to be an all-out Middle East war. The Russians, I think, one day it's very possible that you'll see the United States and the Russians at war. I mean, it would be pretty naive to say that's not at least a 60% chance probably that's going to happen at some point. I mean, it's been talked about for so long, and really, when you look at it, the Cold War just took a pause. It never really ended. The Cold War is starting up again. Now this is Cold War II, and you're seeing actions being done between the Americans and Russians, that weren't even done in the Cold War, mostly by the Americans. The American government have put nukes right all around Russia, put troops all around Russia, and have tried to make the countries that are around Russia against Russia. They're really just trying to corner Russia. Anyways, that's enough about Russia. In Mexico, I think that they have their own. I mean, they have the boogeyman that they often do show that the reasoning of why Mexico has these draconian laws. The government says, well, that's to protect everybody from the drug cartels. But the thing is, the drug cartels work for the government. So
Yeah.
It's like the same thing as the terrorists for the United States, that they often are saying, oh, look at this ISIS boogeyman, oh, look at this Al Qaeda boogeyman, but they don't realize that they're funded and trained by the United States government. It's really the same tactics of intimidating the people into accepting draconian laws.
Yeah, that's true. I like to invite some of the audience, if there is Latin people listening to this show, I invite them to call us. I like to share some points of view with Latin people. I think you have a lot of Latin audience.
Well, actually, we do have quite a bit of a base. Probably actually back in Venezuela, because I have the Venezuelan partnership with this news team that the news team, they have people that are based down that way in Venezuela. One of them is in Venezuela, a news reporter. So, and I have quite a bit of people on Facebook from Venezuela, so they probably every now and then, especially if we have the show in Spanish, will tune in. Most of them don't speak English. Most of my comrades south of the border do not speak English. So they speak Spanish. So I think eventually maybe a show in Spanish would be something cool. I think that even though I said my Spanish, though, that's the thing, is that I've done shows in Spanish before. The only thing that's a little bit difficult for me is that because I speak Spanish pretty well, but the thing is I don't speak it like at an academic level or anything. I speak it just, I can always find the word, but it might sound very simplistic way of speaking. Of course, it's not like my English vocabulary where I speak better. I speak like probably in the top 10% of my own country. I mean, if you heard how a lot of people in this country speak their own language, I have to say, I'm sorry, it doesn't sound too good. But they wouldn't. It'd be like draconian. Isn't that a type of snake or something?
That's the same that happens to me, man. Don't worry. It's just that I'd like to share a more entire idea. Sometimes I don't get the words. I cannot find the words, but let's try it in the next show.
Well, yeah, it depends. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, we'll see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen. Dylan, he said he wasn't just. He said he was really sick. I don't know. He might have the flu or so. So I'm hoping he gets better. If he's not, he might not be back next week either. I'm just saying, so don't be surprised if he's not back next week. He's also, I mean, with all that, again, Dylan's younger than me. He's still in school. I'm out of school, so that makes things a little bit easier. I mean, he does the show to 11, then he has to wake up the next morning early in the morning. For me, I'll be up 10 o'clock, and it'll be everybody else is almost, it's time for lunch, and I'm just like, I just got out of bed, slept like 10 hours.
No. You should. You're obviously a self-educated person, but you should get a mayor or something. You should participate, and that's another point I wanted to share. That something we think that politics is bullshit, and that's true, but we must do our part inside this bullshit to change it. We should take part in politics. We should making decisions for all the countries, for your country, for my country. We should get involved in this bullshit to change it.
Well, it's. I guess I got a shit metaphor here. Is that it is politics. The politics as it is, the corporatist politics is bullshit. However, you have to do something with that bullshit. You can't just ignore it and pretend it's not there and just let it fester in the heat. You're gonna have to get a shovel and do something with that bullshit and throw that and clean that up. I guess that's the only way better to make. Yeah. That was kind of a stretch of a metaphor, but anyways, the point is that
revolution, man.
Yeah, it's that's what's going to happen is that we can, people, they get apathetic. Again, like I said, big words that not many my own people would probably even know. Apathetic, isn't that a type of breakfast or something? I'm sorry. I just know because it's just, sometimes I come on this show after seeing what other people my age are talking about on Facebook. I'm like, geez, I'm glad I've went down the path I did because I'd feel pretty stupid being that stupid. But
yeah.
Anyway, again, it's a revolution. What's going to take is that people are going to. Someone's going to have to pick up that shovel, or all of us are going to have to pick up that shovel, and actually address the bullshit at hand, and do something with it. And a lot of people became apathetic. A lot of people, they know what's happening, but they just don't care, or they do care, but they don't know what to do. And, I think that one of the things that is important is to definitely get educated about everything that's going on. And, you don't have to be educated by the state's institutions. And what I mean by that is that you self-educate. And, you read books of other revolutionaries. There was actually an idea I had, if I get some spare money laying around, is that, with a lot, I think that what could be the thing that inspires them, I don't know, is that having a physical copy of a book or something, and pick a book that actually has a lot of meaning to it, like Gaddafi's Green Book, or maybe the book that Chavez wrote about the revolution and the Bolivian Revolution, or something like that. And pass it out to people that might be interested, and that could be the big spark, that gets them interested. I think that's kind of what got me interested, is reading these articles from different revolutionary websites and getting educated by that. And just once that spark happens, you just want to keep learning, you want to keep learning, and then eventually, I think at a certain point you just get so pissed off that if revolution comes up, you don't even question whether you're brave enough to go into it. You just know that you would have to go into it. If revolution came up in the United States, there would be no doubt in my mind. My first instinct would be, I have to be a part of that. And I would assume in Mexico that it's the same way, with the people that are educated, and because you just read, after this kidnappings really just exemplifies all the dissatisfaction with what's happened under the Peña Nieto regime. It's that event that finally is going to piss enough people off to finally revolt. And I just realized that we're already halfway through the show and no one's called in yet. 718-717-8296. 718-717-8296.
Yeah, but
Was it?
someone please call. And I insist, if there's some Latin audience, please call. I'd like to talk to you. Well, then in English, that's no problem. I think that you,
I mean, I
yeah,
I hate to say it, but I think it's just that I think some people, I don't know, they just I don't think they realize is that you do. There's not, from what I've noticed, there's no point really where you get completely lost. It seems like you can always follow in with the conversation. That's what it's like. You learned English pretty well. I mean, I don't know Spanish. When I got to that point, I was pretty pleased with myself that you know I learned it's a little bit different because you didn't grow up learning any English, and then I think you learned English more recently. I learned Spanish. I always knew some, but I never. But it wasn't until like when I was 13ish that I started actually wanting to become fluent. Now it's to the point where I am, I can just jump in a conversation. It's no big deal unless they have some like like Cubans or something like that. I do have a little bit of trouble, understanding or some of the Mexican slang. Like if they really start going into the hardcore
that wouldn't be a
dialects,
problem.
I start to get lost.
Yeah,
Or
yeah, I know. And I appreciate that you don't speak so many English slangs either. Because I couldn't understand anything.
Yeah, yeah. I think that it's it's kind of weird though. Is that that down in I think at the same time, a lot of people, in Latin America, they want to rush to learn English, and I think that it is good because there's a lot of American, comrades, people that are revolutionary that don't necessarily speak Spanish, but I think that at the same time, we have to have appreciation for our own language. I mean, it is, Spanish is a more passionate language in itself. I think there's, when you listen, for example, when you hear these revolutionaries from South America, when you hear Che speak, or especially when you hear Chavez speak, when Chavez, when he spoke, he had so much passion, But I guess that's the passion of the revolution. The revolution brings out the passion in people. I think that's what it's going to take him. I think in Mexico, they're going to need a very charismatic figure eventually to bring it all together. I don't think necessarily Obrador is that person because I think that he's a little bit. I think he's a little bit older than May desired. I mean, Chavez was pretty young actually when he was leading the revolution throughout the 90s. I mean, when he tried to overthrow the Venezuelan government in 1992, when he was in the military and he tried to do a plot against the Andres Perez government that had done the Carazaco just 3 years prior to 1992. He was only 38 years old. I mean, that's very young when you're talking about world leaders, and then just 7 years later, he actually becomes the leader of Venezuela. I think that's, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It just needs to be somebody that can inspire the youth, because that they are the vanguard of revolution. When you look throughout history, whoever the youth swing to, if they pick the revolutionary side, they oftentimes win because they are the able-bodied people that can actually do the physical aggression in a revolution. I think in Mexico, though, I think this, of course, the students being kidnapped in Iguala 1 year ago. I mean, that's upset many of the youth, but unfortunately, like you said, there are many that are still apathetic and just do not care, which is it's the same in the United States. And I think that many times when you look at the tactics, because the Mexican government is practically just an extension of the United States government, the Mexican government has many of the same tactics to suppressing dissent.
Yeah, we are not a colony of the U.S. That's a fact.
I think Mexico and Colombia are pretty much, unfortunately, our two countries are practically colonies still of the United States government. I mean, I think it's almost like a joke a little bit. If you the 52nd state, many think that Puerto Rico will become a state, and then probably Colombia will be the next state, or one day. It's sad, but it's funny, but it's sad at the same time. But and it's because and what makes me think that there's a lot of truth to that. In Mexico as well, is that you see a lot of the American cultures just taking over the traditional Latin culture of Mexico and Colombia. And the youth, that's a lot of times why they became apathetic, or they just don't care about this what happened in Iguala, is because Iguala, well, they're not going to pay attention to that because they're distracted by their materialistic desires for the new iPhone or whatever. I mean, or whatever, the mentality of corporatism, of buying a bunch of useless corporate garbage that's designed to break in 2 years anyways. It's not even made for any quality, and yet you dish out a bunch of money for this corporate garbage. That mentality is being put in the Mexican people, and it's been being put in the Colombian people.
And that's the first thing we should overthrow from the people's mind is this mentality that consumption. They're not paying attention to the real issues. Yeah, they're just like you said. They're paying attention to the fucking iPhone, to the fucking clothes, to the fucking artists.
Yeah, and I can, I really see, unfortunately, that's only furthered when a lot of times these Hispanics come to the United States. That's all their mindset gets completely corporatized, and that all they care about it is. A lot of times I see them; they seem to be obsessed with clothes, which I can't.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I guess it might be a little. I don't know. Maybe I take it to a whole other stretch. When I go outside, I don't really even care what I'm wearing. I could be wearing a $5 T-shirt and a $5 gym shorts or something like that, because I find that stuff meaningless. I find personality, and stuff that actually matters is what people should judge people on, not by oh look, he's got people waste so much money. People will put themselves into poverty just because they rather they rather have $100 shoes and a $200 T-shirt or something like that. I mean, it really does start to get like that. Down in Mexico also. I mean, they not only have they corporatized their mindset, they brought many of the same corporations that America has into Mexico. Like in Colombia, it's not quite like that because it's not the same. It's not literally the same businesses, but in Mexico they have Walmarts and all this Burger Kings and all the same stuff. Like you look on a map or something, it looks like it almost looks like just an American city, but the streets are in Spanish names. Practically, is the only really difference. It's not Burger King on Martin Luther King Street, but it's on Calle de Reyes or something like that. It's alarming though. Like I said, it's became a colony in so many ways. It's probably why it seems like these people that when a lot of these Mexicans come to the United States, they almost a lot of times fit in because it's almost the same kind of again, all that happens here is that corporatized mindset furthers, and I keep saying that corporatized mindset because because without that, people start to people think, wait a minute, that's bullshit. Why am I going to spend $100 on that useless gadget when I can do that with that thing, or why do I need that? What actual what actual use does that have to my life? People just start buying to buy. When people start just buying to buy, that fuels that fuels the corporations, and the people are distracted, and just becomes a cycle of apathy towards actual real events, and that cycle of apathy towards real events, just keeps the status quo. That seems to be that's kind of the status quo of the United States. What it's became is that people I think people even in this country, a lot of them know what's going on to some extent, but they don't know what to do, or they just don't care, which is alarming. But I think there's going to be eventually an event that's going to happen where they won't be able to, where they won't be able to not care, and they'll know exactly what to do. And exactly what to do is that they're going to have to. It's literally, they're going to have to take out the streets, go out and start storming Washington D.C. And I think that's, Mexico City. They're a lot closer to that. I think that again, the Mexican government will be forced out of there in the next few years at least. I don't think they're going to wait to 2018. I mean, again, I don't know what it's like when you live not that far from Mexico City, right?
Yeah. We're living that. It's good that we realized yesterday that people is getting together for a cause. That's you said that we should have an important event, and the event that happened 1 year ago, I think that would be the perfect excuse to start revolting against the government. I mean, there are many people demanding justice for many reasons. I think, I don't know if you know the story about the children that were born like 4 years ago in Sonora. It's a northern state. That's a true demand of justice. What happened with the self-defense in Michoacán, the autodefensas, that's a real reason, a true reason to start revolting. What happened in Chiapas with the Zapatistas, that's another true reason to start a revolution. But people just don't understand. I don't know if they don't understand or they just don't care about it, and that's sad.
Well, yeah, I think at this point there's really no more excuses at this point why not to revolt. Especially after in Mexico they had after the Iguala kidnappings. That kind of stuff has historically been the spark that causes revolutions. I mean, don't think about the result of the Bolshevik Revolution, because a lot of people will say, well, of course there was flaws afterward, but I'm just saying what caused it to happen in the first place. Why did the people get so angry? There was really what started is 14 years, or not 14, it was 12 years before the Bolshevik Revolution. They had a failed revolution, but that was created by the original event that started all the idea that revolutionary was needed in Moscow was the Bloody Sunday, where the government, the Russian monarchy, shot and killed 500 innocent protesters that were unarmed. Then that people realized, okay, maybe we need revolution. Then they tried a revolution. Unfortunately, the first time they fell concessions, and they just said, okay, we'll make this constitutional. We'll have a constitutional monarchy. But then 12 years later, they hadn't seen much progress, and that led to the 1917 revolution, or the Carazaco in Venezuela in 1989. Only 9 years later, Chavez is elected. After some people say over 1,000 people were shot and killed on the streets of Caracas during the Carazaco by the government at the time of Carlos Andrés Perez. And now this is the Iguala kidnappings. Like I said, there was a delay between those, between the events usually and the actual revolution. I don't think it's even going to be, 12 years like in Russia between that initial event, or 9 years in Venezuela. I think it'll be 2 or 3. Like I said, it's very unlikely that Peña Nieto actually makes it to election, or makes it to the next elections.
Yeah, thanks.
And what's going to happen is that even if there is elections, people are not going to be supportive of whoever the PRI brings out the next time. Who are they going to bring out that the people will actually support? More than 15% of the country, or even I don't think more than 10% of the country would support the next person that the PRI bring to be at the election. So, okay, we'll just say the election happens. They're either going to be faced to do this the easy way and just give it to Obrador, and then, let Obrador win with probably 70 to 80% of the vote. Or they could pretend like Obrador didn't win, say that he lost by 1% or something. People won't believe it.
Yeah.
People are not going to believe it, and then there's going to be revolution immediately after. And probably what happened is that the government that be created by a revolution would be more radical than Obrador. Obrador is a socialist, but I don't think he's as radical as I'm thinking. He's a Zapatista-inspired, possibly something like what happened in Cuba after, something inspired by the ideals of Che Guevara. That kind of revolutionary government would take over. It would not be, what would it? It would not be moderate for sure. And the Zapatistas again are very radical, and they're even more radical than, or more. I say they're more radical than some of the bigger revolutionary movements that have happened in the past. Like for example, the Bolsheviks. I think what eventually happened is that the state got gigantic, and then Stalin happened, and a lot of the original ideas were crumbled. They really stress the idea that there should be little, or possibly, if possible, a society that's set up where there's no government afterwards. It's an anarcho-communist society, which many people, a lot of people think that's unlikely, but it's just kind of set up on the idea that everybody have that they're we all people work a commune, people all have their farms or whatever they work to, and then there's no actual central government. Everybody just kind of works together towards the good or in the benefit of the people working on the project as a whole. But of course, we'll just look at the present, and the present right now it became almost mainstream that the Mexican government had a direct involvement with what happened at Iguala, because it's, even in the United States they have the Spanish TV. I'm not sure if they have that in Mexico as well. I think it's only in America because it's an American-based Spanish television, Univision. Which of course they usually spin stuff to the right, but this time they let somebody on.
The news more than in Mexico. The media has just been ignoring this event, but I think that Univision have been doing a better job than all of the Mexican media,
which I find very surprising because Univision usually, again, they have a spin to the right on most topics. Like Venezuela, they're dead wrong on. They're always saying stuff like "Justicia para Leopoldo Lopez" or whatever. But they forget that he did kill, like the Mexican government.
That's an ironic point, but they have been doing the right thing about Mexico and Ayotzinapa, and they have been doing the wrong in Venezuela, for example, what you said with Leopoldo Lopez. They have been making him seem innocent when he was guilty of the killings in Caracas.
Well, yeah, it's just like what happened in 2002, that the people, Leopoldo Lopez, was trying to blame, was trying to blame the Venezuelan government for the killings that happened when it was the people on the right wing in Venezuela were shooting on their own people, and Leopoldo Lopez was staging violent riots that that were killing innocent people. And what's the weird thing about it? I don't know if that's the actual number he killed, but he was charged for 43 counts of murder, which is the same number of 43. Yeah. It's kind of weird. It's like it's almost like it's almost like the flip side of things. But and how they cover that compared to Univision's coverage of that, and Univision covering the Mexican the Mexican kidnappings, which they actually brought a guy on that was talking about how that he thought that he was some kind of journalist or something. He was a journalist, and he was he saw the police around, and he thought that the police were just there, you know.
I like to make this clear. And at the beginning, they tried to get the police involved. Of course, they participated in Iguala, but the students were delivered to the army. They actually were in the army installations. The last phone call from one of the cell phones of the students indicated that they were actually in a military base. The 27th Battalion.
Hey, you still there? You cut off there.
Okay. Well, the media has been trying to make the police get involved in the kidnapping, where they just delivered the students to a military base, the 27th Battalion of the Mexican Army. Also, there was a phone call from a cell phone of one of the students, and indicated that it was made from this battalion.
What? Lost you again. Yeah. Oh, I thought I cut off there for a sec, but anyways, yeah, one that was again like at least they brought up the fact that it was they weren't like they were delivered to the drug cartels by authorities. They were originally taken by the police. I mean, they were saying that the policemen had, the policemen had.
The students never were delivered with the drug cartel. They were directly delivered to a military base.
Yeah, that's what they're. That's what they were trying to say on there. Yeah, they were directed. They were taken to the military base. The story though goes is that they were in. This guy was almost killed. Actually,
that's not what I say. That's what the parents of the students say. They have been researching by themselves, and everything indicates that they were delivered to the military base.
Well, yeah, what I'm saying is that the story goes though after that, or at some point they end up in the hands of a big drug cartel, and then after that they were probably killed. Who do you think actually, if did the final actions? Do you think that that at the military base they were, that they're being still held, or they were killed at the military base, or do you think that after that they were delivered to the cartel from there? What do you think? What do you think happened after that?
Well, just like you said, drug cartels and the Mexican army work together. That's true, but I think that the drug cartels have nothing to do in this case specifically.
Yeah, that's a different, the media, from the official story is what they're trying to say, is that the drug cartels had they were picked up from there by the drug cartels, and then then after that they were probably they were either held captive or possibly killed. I think that I think that would also be again that sounds because that's where there seems to be this broken link in the official story. They don't explain how they got delivered or why they got delivered to the drug cartel. They don't mention how that happened, delivery of them to whatever the name of the drug cartel, but the drug cartel that they delivered them to. But I think that it's possible, that the Mexican military had done the disposal of the students themselves.
Well, these things about the drug cartels is a perfect excuse for the government to say, I had nothing to do. It was the drug cartels. It was not the police. It was not the army. But they are actually guilty for this.
Yeah, and the thing is that there's still been this. It's still an open investigation because there's really no knowledge of anybody of what was actually happened in the end to these people. I mean, they again, like I said, there's still 35 people that have no account for, that could either be all alive or who knows what happened to the rest of the bunch. We know that 6 definitely did not make it because they were killed in the original clash, in the shootout. But there was there was 2, and then there
Well,
was 2 that are
there's an
likely.
international commission on human rights working on that, and the last outcome was that the phone call they made from a military base. I guess that there is a military. I'm sorry, there is an international commission of human rights working on the case of Ayotzinapa.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's really important because it is still, like I said, there's still 35 people that could be potentially still alive, and could be, who knows, could be potentially released back to their families. And I think there's many sources to try to, if they're actually committed to real justice of these students. I do worry when sometimes international committees are formed that and stuff like that, that are sometimes these international committees have biases toward a certain governments, and usually they seem to be Western governments. A lot of times they are biased to, for example, like Amnesty International. They often make lies about the often like the Syrian government or whatever, and don't really go too hard on the United States government. But I don't know who this. Do you know who this international committee is that's got involved?
Yeah, they are researchers. Most of them are from Argentina, from South America, and
What?
the point is that they are conflicting the official story about the case of Ayotzinapa, and that seems interesting because I think they are really doing their job.
Well, yeah, that seems to be that's definitely seems to be a better group to be investigating. It's definitely people that are from the neighboring countries of Mexico, and a lot of them from Argentina, and they brought the conflicting part of I think that at this point, though, not many people in Mexico actually do believe in the official story of what happened, and even the official story that the Mexican government is telling still puts them at quite a bit of fault, and then this story, the true story, makes their actions despicable, so I think that I think it's not too far away from where it's going to be where most of the world will know that the Mexican government is lying. Of course, they're going to be the United States government is just going to remain silent. I mean, you don't hear it ever. I mean, ever on the news of about any updates on what happened. I don't even think they brought it up. They brought it up maybe a couple of times since this happened. It's been a year now, since Ayotzinapa happened. I think Ayotzinapa is when that truth comes, when that report comes out in the end, that and it's going to be completely different than the official story. That's going to anger a lot of Mexican people into some form of revolution will happen, nonviolent or violent. At least it won't be demonstrations that happen. The demonstrations may not be successful at first, but I think this will be the start of the end of the current Mexican government.
Yeah, and I agree with you that there must be a strong event. There must be some violent event to start this revolution. I hope we get this revolution before the 2018, and I think it's we're gonna make it.
Well, it's yeah. I think that you've seen though quite a bit of this. You've seen a lot of these supposed changes that really have amounted to nothing, and you think that the people would be upset by that because you grew up when the PRI was still in their dictatorship over the country. In fact, you were like 20, right, when the PRI, technically that dictatorship had ended in 2000, and then there was forget what was the president that took. What was the president that won in 2000 in Mexico?
Vicente Fox. That was he worked for the Coca-Cola Corporation. He was not really a change. He was just another puppet in the power.
Yeah, that's what I said. Is that and then that's what happened. Is that you would think was that this frustrating lack of change because they in 2000 people were thinking, no, look, Mexico is finally the PRA is out of power. There's got to be there's got to be some bit of a change that's going to happen now. But then Vicente Fox takes over. There's no real changes. It's practically the same thing, but just not the same name of the party. And then 2006, Calderon, wins.
Yeah, we were all fooled.
Yeah, Calderon wins, but it wins. But really, Obrador won. I mean, most of the country accepted the fact that Obrador had won the election. However, at the end, Calderon was the official winner, and Calderon being the official winner, he ends up becoming the president. Next 6 years, nothing really changes, and then the drug war escalates under his administration. I mean, it got really violent around 2008, 09, 2010. I know that's when it got heightened. And then in 2010, there was I think that's when the reports started to come out about our United States government was giving arms to drug cartels. They were trying to excuse it as they were giving arms to drug cartels so they could find out who the drug cartel members were. And they were going to track the guns and find out what they were doing or whatever. Like, they couldn't do that without doing so. I mean, it was the lamest excuse that practically had been given for one of these scandals, and they just shut it up on our media about what they had done. They just are like, I don't know what was the distraction story at the time. I mean, our media, that's what our media does to keep people blind, is that they just have these distraction stories they go to. And they make a new one every couple months, it seems like. They'll just keep replaying the shit out of some stupid non-news. It gets hilarious what's considered news. For a couple months, they just wouldn't stop talking on our TV about Bruce Jenner because he was this athlete back in the 70s that decided he wanted to become a woman, and they wouldn't talk about that for months. They wouldn't stop talking about it. It was at the same time, though, that the TPP was being signed in America, and the TPP is the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and what that pretty much says is that if corporations are now pretty much the most powerful entity in these certain countries, and that's by law pretty much, because the corporations, if you said, for example, Coca-Cola, we don't want your products in our country, but if you had signed that agreement, they're going to say, we're going to sue you guys, and we're probably going to win, and then we don't care what anybody thinks, we're going to be on your shelves. So
that's what
it was a very terrible move.
It worked. It actually worked. That's what Bolivia did with McDonald's.
Yeah, but but if they had signed the TPP, which they wouldn't be foolish enough to do so, McDonald's could be like, wait a minute, you signed this agreement, so that means we can sue you, and then we're gonna win, and then we get to put all the McDonald's we want in your country. It was like the Corporate Enabling Act. The Corporate Enabling Act allows corporations to do practically whatever in these countries. Mexico will probably be one of the countries if the people don't stop the government from doing so, from signing that agreement. I'm pretty sure they are one of the countries that are negotiating at least. The United States has already signed that agreement. U.S. has signed that agreement at the same. They also had they also had a few other distraction stories at that time. It seemed like it was so obvious that they were trying to distract us for something. Like, it seems like when the news gets as like what had happened at that time, you really have to look what's really going on. Like, it's like, they wouldn't stop talking about two things: Bruce Jenner and gay marriage. I'm serious. That was the two things that was on the TV for about 2 months: was Bruce Jenner and gay marriage, all every day on the TV. And then they had the TPP was going on. They had at the same time stuff in Syria was going on, all kinds of serious events, and when actual real shit goes down, they don't talk about it on the TV. And then unless like
burning down and the media in the U.S. talking about this fucking guy, okay.
And what's the weirdest thing that happened about all of it is that is the way that the people were actually bought into it so much. I mean, that people just kept talking about these topics over and over again. And I'm over here talking about real topics. Going on the radio show. And actually talking about, like, at that time I had a really in fact, I had a really informative show then. Like that week as that stuff was going on, it was like that the week the TPP was signed. Nobody even knew what happened. Nobody knew the TPP was signed when it happened. Everybody just
Mexico when they are about to sign an agreement about an important issue, they just try to put on the agenda an important soccer game or something like this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
This is what I've noticed. This is the Latin way of this. Like when you have like a Mexican media or something. This is what I've noticed. This is how they distract everybody. They're just like, big partido de football. They'll just show some. Presenting the big soccer game on TV. There'll be some hot chick, with giant tits or something like that to keep everybody distracted. And then while something major's happening, there'll be like it's like, and then they'll put in the scroll. It's like, oh yeah, Mexican authorities killed 12 unarmed protesters in outside of Mexico City today. At the same time they're just talking about it. It's like, oh yeah, you're ready for this from Mexico City versus Veracruz, Mexico. We're in the Superliga de football.
Yeah. I know. It's sad. It's embarrassing as a Mexican. Yeah, that's embarrassing. And I can mention one example. When Peña Nieto won the election in 2012, the same day on Sunday, a real important comedian, Eugenio Derbez, he got married the same day. He was a comedian of the most important media in Mexico, the Televisa.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah, it was obviously done to distract people.
Well, that's what happened in the United States. Is that when things got real serious, our government does something. They signed something that just to keep people really distracted. It was the same week the TPP happens. It got overshadowed because, like I said, the stuff that was going on the TV at that time, and then the major thing was that and they wouldn't stop talking about it for a week. They legalized gay marriage, and everybody's just. The thing that almost happened was that it was almost like if you didn't pretend to be excited about it, then you're bigoted or whatever. Which I didn't even mention it once when it happened. I was like, there's more important stuff to be talking about than this. I mean, everybody's like, yeah, the government signed that we can all get married, or they could sign that the gays can get married. Of course. People pretend to be happy for them. They're like, yeah, anyone can get married now. But I'm like, I'm over here in the first place. I'm like thinking, well, isn't the idea that we have to ask the government, anybody, gay or straight, has to ask the government for a license to get married in the first place? When you think you just arrange something personally or with your church or whatever. Just a little bit weird, the whole idea of the American institution of marriage. I don't know. I mean, I'm just being a little skeptical here, but Yeah, and I'm like, anyway, shouldn't we be paying attention to the fact that the United States is, like is about to invade Syria probably next few weeks or next few months? I mean, again, for example, like when the United States were about to, when the United States started, I remember there was the big distraction story, September 2014. There was the United States have actually been in Syria for about a year now, because they pretend to be striking ISIS, but in the reality they're not really attacking ISIS. They're actually attacking the Syrian government. And really ISIS has been their proxy. There's been actually only thing that hasn't happened yet has been a full invasion of a full invasion of Syria. Yeah. But it's already, when the first troop involvement happened back last year, there was a distraction story at that time was, I'm pretty sure it was like what you were saying. There was like a celebrity getting married or something like that. I think it was it was probably like Ashton Kutcher or something like that if it got married. And
that shouldn't be important news. You're supposed to be living in the most civilized country in the world. That wouldn't be an important issue.
Well, yeah, people even commented. There were some people are like, wait a minute, it's like that's how used to war we are now, that America starts a war and all it gets is at the bottom of the screen. They'll say, "Oh yeah, the United States is," while they play whatever distraction story. The United States has sent troops into Syria. It's like, wait, what? They just put it for 1 second at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah.
We've already went through an hour and 40 minutes of the show. Anybody wants to call in the last 20 minutes, we can discuss about the Mexican kidnapping. 718-717-8296, 718-717-8296. Sometimes we do get callers and sometimes we don't. I think that the weird thing is that sometimes the callers just call in when they just want to, when they just look. I think nobody can really disagree with what we're saying today. It seems like on the shows where there's people are going to be where they can actually disagree with a lot of the stuff we're saying, or stuff that there's certain things that get people really riled up. Even inside of the activist community in the United States, there's certain topics they can have a different stance on, and people get riled up, or just people who listen in general. Like one time, I had this guy that was we went back and forth for like an hour about Israel, because this guy was pro-Israeli calling into my show, and I wasn't the host. I was a co-host, so I couldn't say get off my show right now, because I'm not even the one I wasn't even in control of the studio, and I didn't want to ask her, because it was one of her friends I noticed. He's just bringing. It's like, oh yeah, well, the Palestinians aren't even wanted in the other Arabic countries. Why should they be allowed back into Israel? I'm like, because that's their land, and they were there first, and the Israelis came from Europe.
1,000 years before, yeah, they were already there 1,000 years before the Jewish. That's a fact.
Well, yeah, and there was, the thing is that true, there were biblical, the people that are talked about in the Bible, which whether you are a Christian or not, it was true that there were Jews that lived in that area at that time. But here's the thing: is that those Jews were from there, and what happened to a lot of them is that they, 600 years later, a little guy named Muhammad, makes Islam and starts spreading it in that area, and a lot of those same biblical Jews converted to Islam, and they became the Palestinians we see today, or the other ones. There was really not there. Actually, that's pretty much what happened. And there's even some. I think that, from what I understand, I think there's actually Jews that live in Palestine, and they're treated badly because they're Palestinian and are brown skinned. It really is. It's purely about a colonial project that's based by European Ashkenazi Jews. That's the Ashkenazi, or Jews from Europe. Oppress anyone that's not of their specific race and religion.
Yeah,
You know, I heard we got a call. Is that a call? I thought I heard coming from echoing from your screen. We had a call or that. Well, anyways, yeah, you know, I think that you know, and talk about that. I think that's another thing that Latin Americans and during this whole new phase of history that we're going through. You know, that's another thing that a lot of us have collectively finally, you know, taken a strong stance against. Like what was Kirchner saying that if you serve with the Israeli military, you're not going to be you lose your Argentinian citizenship. The people of
I got a call.
Yeah, you gotta press you get like a menu and then you press the call button or not call button. You press the add to call. Like there should be there's a menu and then you know what I was gonna say is that but I say is that a lot of the Latin American people, you know, that they finally have shown the anger to what the Zionists have done to the Palestinian people, and it's like and the leaders reflect the people's opinions, like Chavez and Kirchner, and I think the Mexican people, I think eventually they'll start to wake up even more, you know, and finally, you know, take a strong stance against what the Zionists have done. What the Zionists don't not only cause problems in their own region, the Zionists, you know, influence other governments like the United States government or the Canadian government, and I mean they've made it. It's technically illegal to call for a boycott of Israel in the United States and Canada. That's how much influence the Israeli lobby has over some of these Western governments. Well, they are a Western government themselves, but over, you know, the U.S. and the Canadian government and West Europe, they have a lot of influence over, you know, and you see that by how how they treat the Palestinian issue, Palestinian cause. I think that in Mexico, are many Mexicans yet concerned? You know, have woken up to what's going on in Palestine, and because that seems to be also a major thing that can factor into a revolution. Is that in South America, part of the reason is that, you know, they didn't like how their governments were catering to the Israelis, especially like in Venezuela and Colombia. You know, the left is very mad at the Colombian government because the Colombian government has catered to the Israelis to this point. I wonder in Mexico, are the people yet angry at what the Israelis have done to the Palestinians? Yeah, what happened to that caller? Hello, you still there? It says you're there. I guess maybe you just can't hear me at the second. Anyways, yeah, I think that these kidnappings, the 43 kidnappings, again, this is a mark in the. This is just a mark in the history of this revolution. I mean, it's actually really been starting for a while. Ever since 2006, people have been. Ever since 2006, people have been, when Over the Door had the election stolen from them, people have started to become angrier. And then 2012, when they got robbed from them again, people got a little bit angrier. But this is the one where people aged, people only like 20 years old are, kidnapped by the Mexican government, and they ended up at that military base, and then from then on out, they ended up held captive somewhere or possibly killed. The Mexican government definitely did kill 6 of them. We know that from the original shootout, and it looks like 2 others were killed somewhere along the way. Are very likely dead. And then there's the 35 we have no idea what happened to. And that 35 that we have no idea what would happen to. Who knows what's going to be the eventual result? Will I ever find them? Will they ever be returned to their family? but if they did get killed, we can't let their deaths be in vain. If they were killed, that has to be the spark that caused the revolution. That's the only result that can happen after that.
Yeah,
CP Libre, you back?
Yeah, I'm trying to connect the call.
You got it. Okay, so when that call happens, you should be able. You can click on the call. You just don't click the green answer button. And when you click on the call, there should be like an option like that says add to call, like the one that you're current, and then you can join this call.
Yeah. And it's calling.
Okay, so click on it. Is there an add to call somewhere?
Okay, I lost it. It says I got not enough credit to do the call.
No. Well, anyway, we have they waited almost till the end of the show to call. Anyways, I mean it's 10:51 now. Our show ends in only just a few minutes left.
I'm sorry. I know this guy is listening to us, but please, excuse me, man. I couldn't connect you.
I think people are more distracted by the dogs in the background.
Yeah. My fucking neighbor's dogs.
I have a dog. My dog's 100% Mexican. It's a Chihuahua.
He should be.
I mean, you grow attached to them after having them for a while, but yeah, they're not exactly the brightest of dogs. I mean, they kind of they kind of don't understand simple stuff, and it'll just say that they're one of the few dogs that would be to think blowing leaves is some kind of vicious predator or something.
I know. I have to live with that, man.
Anyways, I think that another thing that's gonna, that should be upsetting to the Mexican people at this point is that their government works very closely and handles the American government, but the American they should realize no matter how people in America are going to spin it, Mexicans are not treated that well when they come to this country. I mean, in that they're treated lower than everybody else, and that they should realize that by the Mexican government working with the U.S. government means they're working with a government that sees the Mexicans as lower. I say that by the way that they're treated, on the media, for example, on the media, they're talked about like a group of people or a nationality, a whole nationality is talked about like they're criminals. I mean, and it's allowed throughout society, and it's allowed, and definitely by the police of discrimination. The police have showed discriminatory methods against Hispanics in general. I mean, I'll just say that if you're Hispanic and you're walking through a richer neighborhood, for example, you have your hood up or something, the police are very likely to at least ask what you're doing there. Me being white, being white and Hispanic, but I look more white, if I was just I could actually be doing something suspicious. I could have part of a blade sticking out of my pocket or something like that. They might just say at the most, "Hey, what's up?" and just see if you say anything suspicious at first, and then just be like, keep driving. But the Mexican, they see something like that, they'll immediately search them and see what's going on, and possibly arrest them. There's definitely a prejudice, I would say, against Hispanics in this country, whether people want to admit it or not. A lot of people in this country think Hispanics are treated too well. They think that they think that anybody that crosses that border should be shot, or crosses that border illegally. It's absurd for what they're fleeing from. I can understand, especially people that live in northern Mexico. where the drug cartels practically run the country. They're feeded by the American government. In North Mexico, isn't that true that they're the ones that are, like, it's odd, they run freely, and they that's where the majority of the murders happen. A little statistic is that more Americans have been beheaded by the Mexican drug cartels than have been beheaded by ISIS. I mean, there's been, like, I think throughout the history, there's been, like, hundreds of Americans have been beheaded by the Mexican drug cartels. That's of how vicious groups these are. And they just do these. They don't only just kill; they kill brutally, just for their show of power. And and then they're protected by the Mexican government and the American government. But of course, the Mexican government is just an extension of the American government. Anyways, we're wrapping up the show. We're in the last 5 minutes. I think we got a lot of good points out. And CP Libre, I got to say, is that I think you did a pretty good job, and you actually taught me quite a bit about this whole situation I didn't know about, and some about Mexican history. So I think it's pretty cool that that I have a co-host that can actually be teaching me some stuff, because not everybody think of like sometimes a guest when I have on, we're just agreeing on everything, or sometimes I'm just informing them, but to have somebody actually inform me about stuff I didn't know is pretty cool. Anyways, next week, let's just go to what's happening tomorrow. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock on Voice of Rebellion Radio, we're going to be at Staybold Radio, not here at UCY Radio, but Staybold Radio, where I'm going to be interviewing Joaquin Flores at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. It's going to be a 45-minute interview. Don't miss it. And then next week we will be back, and hopefully the entire team will be back, including Dylan Wade. If Dylan Wade's not back, I don't know. I'm thinking programa en español, camarada. Próximo semana. No sé, pero posible. I think it's possible we could have a Spanish show, is what I was saying to my co-host. Who knows? I think it's about time. I was kind of saying, I think when I haven't had since moving to UCY, I haven't had a Spanish show. I haven't done a Spanish show in a while, and I don't know. And it would be nice actually talking to somebody that had in Spanish that actually has similar dialect than me, because past experience that wasn't the same. But CP Libre speaks pretty similar Spanish than I do. When it comes to the kind of Spanish we speak. So that'd be cool. Anyways, we're in the last minute of the show, and I want to thank everybody who listened to Voice of Rebellion Radio and UCY Radio today. And hopefully next time we'll have some callers. And
yeah, I can just tell you that it was a guy, he was a Canadian living in Nicaragua, and he says that we shouldn't be talking about this if we have never been to, for example, Venezuela or these countries we discuss about. But I told him I respect his point of view. Yeah.
Wait a minute. We're practically from we are from these Latin American countries. He's not actually, he's Canadian, and so that's a little bit of a stretch to say we don't know what we're talking about. I mean, we both. It's like,
however, I respect his point of view.
Yeah. One and no return, and nobody can stop it. Malcolm Little, when he knelt before Elijah Muhammad, the comet that killed the dinosaurs, changing the earth. They love to criticize, they always say I changed for the worse. Like prescription pills when you misusing them, nigga. The Templar Knights, when they took Jerusalem, nigga, and figured out what was buried under Solomon's temple. Al-Aqsa, the name is not coincidental. I know too much, the government is trying to murder me. No coming back like cutting your wrists open vertically. How could the serpent be purposely put in charge of the country? Genetic engineered sickness spread amongst me. My people are so hungry that they attack without reason, like a fucking dog ripping off the hand that feeds them. Immortal technique is treason to the Patriot Act. So come and get me, motherfucker, cause I'm not coming back. This is the point from which I can never return, and if I back down now, then forever